Okay.
Hold on, I gotta go get, I'm gonna go get my glasses.
We have a few more to wait for, Jim?
I don't think so.
No? You think this is a good group?
Well, I don't know if it's a good group, but I think this is all we're going to have.
This is the group we've got. Okay, I've got the one bottle that Heather is chilling for me. Should I go ahead and get it now?
Yeah, I'll run and get it.
You sure? Okay.
Yeah, I'll run and get it.
It's a bubbly. Okay, that sounds great. I can't tell if we're recording or not. Maybe he can edit it.
Yeah, it's recording.
It's recording. Well, hey guys, welcome. My name is Brian Borlick. I work with National Wine Spirits, now Republic National Distributing Company, or RNDC, since we get tired of saying Republic National Distributing Company for so long. I've known Gary for many, many years and have loved working with these restaurants. I just live down the street and I probably pop in here every other month for dinner. I usually sit up at the bar with my wife and drink some either Pinot or some good Cabernet with a French dip or a queso or a flatbread or all kinds of good dishes here to pair with the wines. So what we're going to do today is taste a couple new wines that have just been added on the list. One wine that's I think is fairly new as well. And then just also kind of talk about grape varietals in general. Thank you, Jim. And talk about the characteristics of wine and kind of how to describe them, how to put them into terms where maybe you can make some good food and wine recommendations. Because really that's what it comes down to. I think your guests really want to hear is just a little something about the wine, whether what kind of food you would pair with it, or if they have a food, what wine you would recommend with that food. And if nothing else, then maybe a story on the wine. It's not so important to know, that this wine was fermented with 10% of this grape and 5% of that grape, or what the pH or the residual sugar and all that kind of stuff. It really it helps to sell the stories, to sell the sizzle versus the steak. So I'll tell you a few stories about each of the wines we're going to talk about too. So some of these have been on your wine list for a little while. And we're going to start off with tasting the Marlborough Estate Sauvignon Blanc. So this is a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. We added this to the list about a year ago, I think. And I know it's been selling really well for you. You guys may be all familiar with the grape Sauvignon Blanc. So this grape varietal tends to have, every grape varietal, whether it's Cabernet, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, is going to have a primary fruit characteristic. And this is what we would use to describe it as tasting like. And so when we taste this, when we taste all the wines, we kind of talk about a primary fruit characteristic. And rather than getting caught up in reading some of these descriptions where it says peach and honey blossom and lavender, but as long as you can remember maybe the main primary fruit characteristic of each of these main varietals that we're tasting, I think it'll really help you. The other thing we're going to do when we taste each of these wines too is we're going to imagine whether it's full-bodied, medium-bodied, light-bodied. And you kind of have to readjust the scale for reds and whites, right? Because all reds are going to be more full-bodied than even a heavy full-bodied white, and vice versa. So we'll kind of talk about a scale and imagine the weight of some of these wines. And the other thing we're going to do is we're going to imagine a little bit of a triangle. And I don't know if you want to take some notes on the sheets I have here, you can draw a little triangle for each wine. Now we're going to talk about the three corners. Imagine each corner of the triangle. So the corner on your right would be the corner for acid. So this is acidity. You guys all know what acid is? Acidity is like, say, a Granny Smith apple, the green apple. When I was a kid, there was only two kinds of apples, right? There was green and red. And now you've got, the Red Delicious, the Macintosh, the Honey Crisp, the Fiji, and all these different apples. All these different apples are a lot like grapes, all these different grape varietals. They're all grapes. They're all apples, but they have just different characteristics of acidity and flavors and things like that. So you all know the green apple is going to be much more in that acidity corner, that crisp corner, right? And the other corner then on the bottom and the left, that's going to be your fruit corner. So you guys know a Red Delicious apple is nice and fruity, right? So that would be kind of like in that fruit corner. Now, it's easy to confuse fruitiness with sweetness, and we don't want to do that because all these wines we're tasting today are dry or essentially bone dry, very, very little residual sugar. I think you guys have a Riesling on the list and maybe a Moscato. those are going to be sweet. And anytime you have sugar in the wine, it's instantly going over to that fruity corner, right, of the triangle. But those are really the only two sweet wines. The other wines are all going to have some aspect of fruit. If a wine, even though it's bone dry, doesn't have some fruit to balance the other two triangles, then it's a sweet wine. It's, you know, you want to have some fruit. Even the driest wine will have some fruit to it. And then the top of the triangle, we're going to imagine this word called tannin. You guys heard this word before? So tannin is what gives a lot of structure to the wine in addition to the acidity. And what you need to imagine here is, you guys are all coffee drinkers, I assume. Anybody make tea? You know, you put the tea bag in the hot water, and you're supposed to leave it in, you know, for what, a minute or so? But if you take it out after only 20 seconds, it's not a very strong tea. It just tastes like water. It's very light, very low in tannin. If you leave it in for the minute that you're supposed to, you get a nice, good, strong tannin to it. But if you leave that tea bag in for 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, the tea becomes very astringent and almost bitter, and that's a very strong tannin. Now, while most of our wines hopefully don't have any of those bitter or astringent tannins, you guys understand I'm talking the mouthfeel, the component of what that tannin structure is in the wine. Red wines tend to have obviously more tannin because tannin comes from the skins of the grapes. It also can come from oak too, so if you smell oak or taste oak flavors in a wine, you know you're going to have a little more tannin in the wine. And the more tannin you have, typically, we'll see this correlation in our scale to make the wine a little more full body. All right? So if you have that kind of background real quick on all the wine lingo that we'll use, I'll just pass this around. You guys can just pour a little sip, and we'll talk about it, smell it, taste it, dump it out, and move on to the next one. So as I said before, this is Marlborough Estate Reserve, New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. So first of all, the sizzle, the kind of talking points to remember on this wine is people who drink Sauvignon Blanc, well, they'll know New Zealand because New Zealand has now become the place, the most popular place for Sauvignon Blanc. And as a result, if we're going to only have a few Sauv Blancs on the list, you want to make sure you have one New Zealand. It's the go-to Sauv Blanc for everybody to try. And what's the most famous, let's take a little quick poll here, what's the most famous region in California for making wine? Napa, exactly. Everybody heard of Napa Valley? It's on fire right now. There's been a lot of fires out there. It's very scary. Our whole wine industry. We're going to taste a Napa Cab here at the very end. And this Napa Cab a year from now might cost a little more. We might not be able to have a Napa Cab anymore because the prices are just keep going up and up and up, and this fire and the droughts. Yeah, I mean, luckily the grapes I think can survive the fire, you know, better than say trees and forests can even. But a lot of the buildings have burned down, and it's just not good. Yeah, people have been dying, and that's even the worst part. So, but you know, if you replant, if the vine does die, it'll be 5 years before you get a true wine crop of grapes off of it. So that can be a long time with the shortage of grapes. So I bring up Napa Valley when I'm talking about New Zealand for what reason? The Napa Valley of New Zealand is a district called Marlborough. This Marlborough Valley, if you will, is the most popular place. And if you've not heard of Marlborough Valley in New Zealand, oftentimes your wine drinker will, if they like Sauvignon Blanc. They're going to say, what's the best place in New Zealand for Sauvignon Blanc? Marlborough. And so this winery has the name, it's been around that long, it has the name of the most popular place in the name. So just remember, this is the most popular region for Sauvignon Blanc in New Zealand. It's called Marlborough, and this is this small family-owned winery there. So I see some of you have been tasting already. Hopefully you still have some left to taste with the group. Now what do you smell here? It should jump right out of the glass at you. A lot of citrus notes to it, right? Oftentimes Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand gets criticized as being sort of very simple and plain, and it smells like grapefruit, and then it tastes like a real tart, acidic thing, and that's it. Yes, but it should have that, but it should have more complexity too. And I think that's what's great about this Marlborough Estate Sauvignon Blanc is that it's more than grapefruit. You can smell some gooseberry, you can smell a little lime, lemon, citrus, in addition to the grapefruit. There's almost an herbalness or a grassiness to it, kind of a little bit of a mint a little bit of grassiness. So there's a lot of complexity going on. So when you taste this now, imagine what weight it is. We say this is medium, light, full body. And then think about our triangle. Is this going to be a little more towards the fruit, the tannin, or the acid? I hope you all say acid, right? Because this is very tart. It's that nice tartness, that acidity makes it very mouth-watering and refreshing, especially on a warm fall day like this or a hot summer day. Very refreshing. And because of that acidity, this is going to pair with some different things better than others. So, do you want to have heavy cream or butter sauces with this much acidity? No. That acid will clash with the richness of those creamy or buttery sauces. Won't be any good. But if you have, it's just some shrimp with some olive oil, anything light, any pasta that doesn't have a lot of, again, a heavy cream or anything in it, it's going to pair very nicely and be very refreshing with that. I think whether it's chicken or seafood, depending on how it's prepared, this is going to be an excellent match. Also an excellent match with anything fried. Fried foods like Christmas and anything fried goes very well together. I will oftentimes get a glass of the Sauvignon Blanc. If my wife and I always get the chips and queso appetizer, we'll start off with that. And it's not a perfect pairing, but it goes very well. We have one glass left for you.
I don't drink.
Okay, we'll get you caught up. You can maybe take a smell, an aroma of some of the other ones.
Yeah, of course. I'd love to do that.
Okay, so there is some fruitiness to this, but wouldn't you say this is definitely more in that crisp triangle? Almost getting into the corner of it because it is so very tart. What about the weight? It's certainly not full body, and I wouldn't say it's really light, but it's light to medium body. So again, when you're talking about food pairings, I have a sheet that talks about all about the food pairings. And rather than kind of read that to you, we'll just kind of discuss it as we go, because you guys can read it for yourselves. But one of the things that they say is you match the body of the dish with the body of the wine. Hence, if you have a heavy, rich cream sauce, you want a heavy, rich, wine. And this is maybe for the lighter dishes, if you will. Everybody got that? Any questions on this?
That's a Sauvignon Blanc.
Marlboro Estate Sauvignon Blanc.
I can tell you about craft beer, but wine is not at my alley.
Well, that's why we do these trainings, so you guys can, let's talk about pronunciations. Let's talk about any questions. There's no wrong questions. Just ask, and we will do the best we can to answer.
Sauvignon, can you pronounce that?
So, the winery is called Marlboro Estate Reserves, and the grape varietal is Sauvignon Blanc. So think of it, Sauvignon Blanc. Sauvignon Blanc. Sauvignon Blanc. It's a French pronunciation of a French grape. Hey, no, you gotta say Sauv Blanc. Because even in the industry, we get tired of saying Sauvignon Blanc, Sauvignon Blanc, Sauvignon Blanc. So we just say Sauv Blanc. Everybody can say Sauv Blanc. Sauv Blanc. Hey, if you can say India Pale Ale and Porter and all those other craft beers, you just give it a couple of practice tries and you can master some of these key wines. All right, so next is the J-Lord Chardonnay. Now this has been on the list for as long as I can remember because it's such a good value, and today it remains even a more amazing value than it was before. Because so many more of the other wines that used to be this price have all gone skyrocketing through the roof in price. So pass this around and just hold off a second on tasting it until we talk about it real quick. So we have two J-Lore wines on the list. So let's talk about J-Lore real quick. The J stands for Jerry. Jerry Lore is a real man. He's grew up in North Dakota. Made some money in the oil industry and decided that he liked wine more than the oil industry, decided to move out to California. This was in the late 70s. Now, at this time, there was kind of a wine boom going out in California, but where were all the people? Where was all the buzz? Where were all the new wineries going? They were going to Napa Valley and Sonoma Valley. Napa, Sonoma, Napa, Sonoma. And still to this day, Napa and Sonoma are more popular. But Jerry was a pioneer because he said, you know what? I don't want to go to Napa, Sonoma. The land prices there are already going through the roof. He goes, I'm going to go down to Southern California. And he went to Southern California, and what he did is he did all his red grapes, all his Cabernet, down in an area called Paso Robles, which is way Southern California. We'll talk about that more when we taste the Cabernet. But all his Chardonnay grapes he planted in Monterey County, as you said you saw on the label. So this is not just from anywhere in California, it's all from Monterey. Monterey is the area where you find Pebble Beach Golf Course. So you have a lot of golfers in here, golf enthusiasts as customers. This is right around Pebble Beach. And not only is it just from Monterey County, this is from a special area you can see on the label. It's called Arroyo Seco. Anybody speak Spanish? Arroyo Seco means dry river. So this dry riverbed is one of the most, it is the most famous place in Monterey County, particularly for Chardonnay. This Arroyo Seco, so it's from a wonderful, very famous region for wine grapes in Monterey County. And so oftentimes your cheap Chardonnay by the glass, I know you guys have a French Chardonnay, the Fortin France, maybe it's a little less expensive than J. Lohr. That's a nice little unoaked Chardonnay, very inexpensive and good. But oftentimes if you have a cheap California Chardonnay, it'll just be from California. And that means the grapes are coming from the Central Valley where it's way hot, and that's the same place they're growing all the lettuces and the fruits and vegetables that you are getting from the restaurant sometimes. But this Monterey Arroyo Seco is only grapes there, it's one of the top places. So remember Jerry Lohr and the Dry River area for this Chardonnay. So you guys should know Chardonnay now. Let's go ahead and smell this and see what kind of aromas you get. Yes, question?
So why is J. Lohr so cheap then?
You know, I think Jerry has never been about making money. And the other reason is because his grapes are in Monterey and Paso Robles counties and not Napa, Sonoma, he's always paid much less for his land.
Okay.
And he bought it back in the 70s when it was way less expensive.
Right.
So his cost of doing business, if you will, the cost of goods, is so much lower than if, like say, you and I were to go out there and start a winery. We'd be paying a lot more money,
Right.
thousands and tens and thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars more per acre. And then you have to pay to plant the vineyards, everything just costs more nowadays. And so as one of the pioneers, that's why he's such a value.
Is he still alive?
Yes, he's retired. His son Steve is running the company now. But Jerry, I'm going to say he's about 78. I met him a couple times. He's a crazy old man, a good guy. So have you guys had a chance to smell the Chardonnay? So you maybe had Chardonnay before. So the primary fruit characteristic for the Sauv Blanc or Sauvignon Blanc was, remember, sort of grapefruit and citrus. The primary fruit characteristic for Chardonnay, to me, is apple and pear. And I certainly, hopefully you too, get some nice apple and pear in here, but there's something else going on in this wine. You guys smell some of the almost kind of smokiness.
The oak.
Yeah, some vanilla, some cream, some butter. A lot of these flavors are coming from the toasty oak barrels. So instead of just being like an apple, there's apple, there's green, red apple, but there's also like a baked apple or a spiced apple component to it. Very complex, so you get some of those baked and spiced apple notes to it. A little smokiness, because the oak is toasted, so you can say toasty or smoky. So when we're thinking food pairings just off the aroma alone, anything like that's been grilled on the grill is going to be pretty good with this Chardonnay most likely. But let's go ahead and taste it and imagine a weight as compared to the Sauv Blanc we just tried, and also imagine that triangle of acid, tannin, and fruit. See what you think. Oh, who has grilled pork? I see grilled pork chops.
Is that the French chocolate?
So,
The French chocolate?
oh man, that's such a delicious Chardonnay. Now, it's a little too oaky for me personally. I personally like a Chardonnay that's not quite so rich and oaky. I tend to like them a little crisper. But you'd be surprised. Yes, I would put this as a very full body for a white. Very, very full body. And it's pretty oaky. So if your customer is ordering a Chardonnay, I think you have 3 Chardonnays by the glass. You can say, hey, we progressively get from no oak to a good amount of oak to a lot of oak, and we move from a lighter body to a real full-bodied style of Chardonnay. So ask them what style they prefer. Typically, the ones that have oak is very, very expensive. The average French oak barrel costs over $1,400 per barrel. and you can only fit 25 cases of 12 bottle cases in that barrel. So you can do the math and just figure out how much money you have in oak per bottle, just right off the bat. But that oakiness also makes for some fun food matches. Again, anything grilled. Because this is full body, this is not Chardonnay. Classic pairing would be chicken, some fish, but this is certainly rich enough to stand up with the pork, as we just mentioned. Anything grilled. If the fish is grilled, especially though once we get in, if the fish has butter. What about scallops or lobster or shrimp? If it has any butter or cream, then you want to move into this Chardonnay for a wonderful food pairing. Certainly, this has some acidity to it, right? It has a nice, crisp, clean finish, but it certainly has a little more richness in the fruit side. It's a little fruitier, even though it's dry. In the finish, it's very fruity. And there are some tannins, because Chardonnay is more full-bodied. You get just a little more tannin, and the oak tannin adds it up somewhat as well. But I would put this over in that fruity, maybe edging towards the tannin part of the triangle. So on that left side of the triangle, if you drew one. In terms of stylistic. And everybody can, smell and taste and feel different things with wine, especially if you're not used to drinking it all day long like I am. So palate might sense it a little differently. There's no right or wrong answers here, but I'm just telling you that what the experts and what the wine critics would call this type of wine, some of the food pairings. You guys like this Chardonnay? It's a little different, way different than Sauvignon Blanc. And it's a little different than your other Chardonnays that you have by the glass.
Oh, wait, I thought the Sauvignon Blanc was like an interesting white wine. Chardonnay.
No, Sauvignon Blanc is the grape varietal, and Chardonnay is the grape varietal. I mentioned this earlier. When it comes to wines, they're typically named after the grape varietals from which they're made with. And that's why, two Chardonnays will taste different, but they'll still have some similarity. Whereas if you have a grape like Sauvignon Blanc and a grape like Chardonnay, there's such different grapes that the wines taste, completely different. And that's why in America we tend to recognize wines after the grape varietal which they're produced. And it gets confusing. You can have some red blends or some, that always gets a little confusing as well. And of course, when you get into European wines, say from France or Italy, they tend not to name them after the grape varietal. They'll name them after the little village or the little region, like Bordeaux or Burgundy, or the Côte d'Aron or Chianti, things like that. We're not going to taste the Spanish wine, although maybe I can get Jim to open a Spanish Tempranillo for us. We can try that perhaps as well. Yes.
What do you mean by when you say like light to medium volume and full body? What is that?
Okay, so you want to imagine your tongue is a scale, okay, and you said you're a beer girl, so I'm going to put it in beer terms. So for me, like a Hefeweizen would be very light bodied, right? And a porter to stout would be very full bodied. Okay,
Thank you.
so Sauvignon Blanc, I would say, it's thicker than water. It's kind of like a skim milk body, more like a Hefeweizen. Whereas that Chardonnay, for a white wine, that Chardonnay is very full bodied, sort of like a porter. You have to reset the scale when you go to red wines because they're so different.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. So we're going to have a little fun now with some bubbly. This is one of the newer wines on your list. This is from Francis Ford Coppola. We've had some Coppola wines on the list in the past. Coppola is a full-time wine owner, winemaker. He lives at the winery in Napa Valley. Oh, pardon me. And he is very, very hands-on in all the aspects of it. I have the 750 here in the glass because I didn't want to open up a ton of these little cans. I'm going to open these cans up just so you can see them, maybe pass them around. These are the little 187s that you guys don't have the bottle, the glass. You guys have the cans, because when it comes to sparkling wine, if you want to pour someone a glass and they order a glass and then no one orders a glass the rest of the night, or then the champagne or the sparkling wine goes flat. When you have these little cans, it's like having a little 187, or whether it's in glass or cans. There's no problem with it being in a can because we've been drinking beer in cans for a long time and nobody has issues with it. But typically, we'll have your bartender pour this into the champagne glass, the flute, or a wine glass, and pour. And you don't want to show your customer the can just because they'll freak out about it. But it's just a way that you can assure your customer that you're serving them a very, very fresh glass of sparkling wine, that it is not, you know, it's not gone flat, or it's not having any issues. Oh, I'm so glad you said that. So let's talk about selling the sizzle of this wine. The one thing to remember about this wine is that Sophia is Francis Ford Coppola's daughter's name. All right. The other thing to remember is that he did not make a sparkling wine until his daughter got married, and he had his winemaking team. They sat down and they made this sparkling wine for his daughter's wedding, and that was several years ago. The other thing to remember about this is that oftentimes if you see a 187, a sparkling wine that's very inexpensive, it's made with crappy, cheap grapes that no one's... These are grape varietals that even I haven't heard of half the time. They're very, you know, just cheap grape varietals. You guys can look on your stat sheet here and see that this is made from, I think it says 80% Pinot Noir and 20% Chardonnay. So these are Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, classic grape varietals, and these are the grape varietals that go into, if you're making, you know, those $50, $60 bottles of champagne. Those are the only two grapes permitted in those champagnes. Yes. Yes, because this is a rosé. So you can make it.
Are most rosés are made with Pinot Noir?
No, you can make rosé out of any red grape, but all sparkling rosés are made with Pinot Noir. Yes, but you can take, you can have a champagne or a sparkling wine that's 80% Pinot Noir, 20% Chardonnay, and it'll be clear. Because all grape juice is basically clear. In order to make a wine rosé, the skins, all the color comes from the skins. So this is not 80% of a red Pinot Noir. This is 80% Pinot Noir, but they've only allowed the skins to be, hey guys, hear me out. They've only allowed the skins to be in contact with the grapes for maybe 8 to 24 hours. So that way you get a rosé and not a red Pinot Noir. And then the Chardonnay is not really to lighten the color at all. The Chardonnay is to add extra and different flavors, because what you're going to get is you're going to get a lot of cherry from the Pinot Noir, since that's the main grape, but then you'll get some of that apple and some of that citrus from the Chardonnay, because this is done in all stainless steel. There's no oak, and so when you don't oak Chardonnay, it tends to be a little crisper, and it tends to be more like a clean, bright Granny Smith apple. So you guys can all see the color. Check out the aromas, see if you get.
I know that,
Oh, yeah.
that this has become more of a more popular.
Oh, rosés have become so popular. Now, a lot of times people, when they're talking rosés, the ones that are so popular are the still, the non-sparkling dry rosés. Now, this is a sparkling wine. You can tell it's not so effervescent that you can drink it as a dry sparkling rosé.
Because you didn't smell it.
The Bel Air was sparkling, so that's come off the list and been replaced by this one, if I'm not mistaken. No, the Bel Air was a little more expensive.
But yes, the reason that
The Bel Air was also not a 187.
is because then I can wash her.
So this has replaced the Bel Air, you guys, because the Bel Air was not a 187. I think it was a half bottle. It was a lot more expensive. So that's basically, you have almost 3 or 4 glasses in a half bottle. Here you just have one really big full glass. It's almost a glass and a half. So you guys understand how this is made. You understand how it's made rosé. You understand the flavors. But you guys get the kind of the cherry, the strawberry. I heard somebody say pomegranate. To me, it's a little more cranberry. Are you guys just reading the? Are you reading the sheet?
No, I see that it's saying clove, but I don't.
Well,
I don't.
Just a hint of spice in the nose, not the finish. I don't get it in the flavor.
Yeah, I don't get that.
I wouldn't say clove either. I'd just say spicy. But mainly this is nice, a bright strawberry, cherry, fruity. But wouldn't you agree? Bone dry, just a nice bone dry, and lightly sparkling. I don't have the list in front of me, but I think this is very affordable too. Very, very, very affordable for a glass and a half. All right, so next we're going to jump into red wine. We're going to taste 2 Malbecs. Why are we tasting 2 Malbecs? Well, I just gotten done telling you that the main reason one wine tastes different than other is from the grapes from which it's made, right? Chardonnay tastes different than Sauvignon Blanc. We just found that out. But now we're going to try 2 Malbecs. And they're going to taste a little different. There's going to be 2 main reasons. One is where they're grown. Now these are both grown in Argentina, and they're both grown in the most famous region in Argentina is called Mendoza. Right up against the Andes Mountains as you go over the mountain range to Chile. So you say, Brian, these are both Malbecs. They're both from Argentina. They're both from Mendoza in Argentina. Why are they going to taste different? Because one of them is going to be at the valley floor, at the flat area right before the mountains. That's this mountain door. The other one we'll try, the Catena, is coming, the vineyards are actually up in the mountains. So you're going to change altitude, and it completely changes the way that this wine will taste. So why do we have 2 Malbecs on the list, or even 3 Malbecs? Or the reason we have more than one of the same varietal is because they're different styles. So if you guys could just remember, oh, this Malbec has this style, this Malbec has this style. If your customer ever asks, what's the difference between your 2 Malbecs? You can say, well, one's $1 cheaper, one's $1 more expensive. You could say, hey, the Mountain Door is from it's called Mountain Door because it's at the foot, the door of the mountains. So you can remember that the Mountain Door is where it's flat, the flat part of Mendoza. All right, and then the Catena, Vista Flores, is, you have to remember, Nicholas Catena is the master of Mountain Malbec. Right, so 3M, master of Mountain Malbec. He is going to be the one that's made up in the mountains at the higher altitude. And you'll see the different flavor profiles. Okay, so Malbec tends to have, the primary fruit characteristic for Malbec tends to be sort of a blackberry, maybe a little raspberry, maybe a little plummy notes to it. You guys all smell this?
Can I ask you a question
Yes.
about the regions? Because you're saying it's the Mount Dore that is, there's 2 regions.
Well,
What
it's
is-
one
what's
region.
the difference? Okay, not the regions, but you're saying one is.
Where the vineyards are located.
Yeah, like if it's a lower in the higher mountains, what is the?
I'm about to explain that to you.
Okay.
Let's talk about the flavor of this real quick, and I'll jump right into that. So this is on the floor, the flatlands right before the mountains at the Mountain Door, right? But what do you guys smell here? You guys get that nice blackberry, maybe a hint of raspberry, kind of plum. It's nice bright red fruits. Let's taste it, and remember, we're resetting our scale for light, medium, and full body. I don't have a Pinot to try with you because I don't have any Pinots on the list now. But you guys all know Pinot Noir tends to be the lightest body of the red grapes.
I'm saying this is more of a.
Yeah, for me, if you taste, I think Malbec tends to be kind of, not light, not full, but right in that medium body. I think Malbec and Merlot are both the perfect medium bodied wines. It makes them very versatile with food. Oh yeah. So lots of blackberry, kind of has some nice soft, creamy fruit, and what's really soft are the tannins. You guys feel the tannins now? The only really tannins we had in the Chardonnay were from the oak, maybe a little bit of the skins, but now in the red wine you're getting some tannin. But we're still nowhere near the top of that triangle where the big tannins are. This is right in that sweet spot, nice soft tannins. Very low acidity though. We're kind of, again, a lot like the Chardonnay in that, sort of middle left-hand side of the triangle forming.